Andy, che non ha capito una parola di quello che ho detto, ma va benissimo, per la sua presentazione. Dopo avremo la possibilità di fargli delle domande, naturalmente. Floor is yours.
I think we are having some technical problems. It worked last night, so maybe you can say what you said again. But slower?
It says totally uninteresting for the audience, I'm sorry.
I saw a thumbs up earlier, and then I saw a lot of this, so I think that's a bad thing.
Maybe we can start with the questions. So do it the other way around. I don't know if it's weird to you, or...
I think many of the questions you would ask would then be answered in the presentation. So this gentleman has been running back and forth many times. Are there any Mac geniuses in the house? Thank you. I have an ally here in the front row. What's he doing? It's worth waiting for, I promise. No, actually, I don't.
I hope they will let us stay in the room for a little longer, since we waited a little bit at the beginning. So we can...
I'm sure there are radio people in the room, and I know dead air is a sin. So we have an idea in the front row, yes.
Tell us about your new offices in California.
Oh, I haven't been there, but sure.
The question is about the new headquarters of Facebook in California.
We did. We just moved across the street to a second campus. This is, I believe, the 5th Facebook office that we've had in California. Not to give away the headline from my speech, but I'm based in New York, so I haven't been to the new office in California yet. But we are rapidly growing as a company. When I started in New York 4.5 years ago, we had about 30 people. I think we have about 500 to 600 now in our New York office. It's a mix of sales, engineering, product, and our media partnerships team is also based in New York.
So I'm going to ask you a question just to kill this wait, which I'm sure doesn't spoil your presentation.
Better than my bad jokes, so thank you.
Because we talked about that, and I think it was a fascinating issue to hear what you brought from your experience in legacy or traditional journalism in this new capacity, and what's the things that struck you the most, and then you think were more valuable. Oh.
How about this for the presentation? Oh, great. And I can click from here? Yeah. Perfect. Green means go. Universal. Thank you. So thank you very much for getting this working. I think we were doing a good job killing time, but not a great job. First of all, I want to thank the IJF for giving me the opportunity to speak to all of you today on behalf of Facebook, and also come to this incredible setting, both for the speech. This is a beautiful place, but Perugia and this area of the country is really amazing. So thank you for inviting me here today. So first, I'm going to introduce myself. Yes. So like I said, my name is Andy Mitchell. I am based in New York. I am on the media partnerships team. So what our role is with the company is to work with media companies around the world. My focus is on news. I oversee the news team. We are a global news team. We have people across the world working specifically with news publishers. I've been in news my whole career. I started at CNN. I was actually part of the launch team at CNN.com in 1995. So I've literally been working in online news as long as it's existed. When CNN launched CNN.com in 1995, we built ourselves as the world's first constantly updated news and information service, which we all today take for granted that all news sites are constantly updated, but in 1995, that was a very big deal. I had a lot of opportunities in my career to work on unique news experiences. One that I'm particularly proud of was when I was at CNN, I led a partnership with Facebook to celebrate the inauguration of Barack Obama through the partnership for the inauguration. In the US, the inauguration of Barack Obama was a very big deal, with the first African American being elected president. His inauguration happened during a work day, and so many people were left without the ability to share this moment with their friends. So CNN and Facebook partnered to create a social news experience where people could celebrate the inauguration while watching the inauguration on CNN.com live and share this experience with their friends. At the time, and I think this record still holds, CNN.com set the record for live simultaneous streams on the internet with 25 million people watching at the same time. Also, when I was at CNN, Facebook approached us to be a launch partner for the like button. The like button is ubiquitous across the internet today, but when CNN was approached to be a launch partner, it was before it even existed. At the time, Facebook was a very small company, and there weren't people that had news experience. When they came to CNN to launch the like button, we worked with them to help them understand that the majority of news stories, unfortunately for the work that we all do, you can't really like, because a lot of them involve tragedies and things of that nature. And so we collaborated with Facebook to invent the choice that news sites could put a recommend button instead of like on their pages. And that choice still exists today. So news sites can embed either a like button, but most of them choose to embed a recommend button instead. So because I had already worked with them and I was a strong advocate for Facebook within CNN, they approached me to join the team in October, and I joined Facebook in October of 2010. It was a very exciting opportunity for me. I was one of just 2 people that were working on media partnerships across news, entertainment, and sports. But it's not just me today that works on news. I think a lot of you probably know Liz Herron. Liz joined our team a year ago yesterday, actually. And she is now running a function in the news team, working specifically with journalists to help use our platform better. And we'll actually talk about how you can do that later on in the presentation. In addition to in addition to Liz, Nick Wren, who's with us here today, we recently hired from CNN. He's also worked at the BBC and Reuters, and he is overseeing our European partnerships team. So we are continuing to build the function within Facebook where we can work more closely with the news industry. And it's not just us. We have got all across the media partnerships, engineering, technology, product, people that work have worked in news before. And so we have a number of people across the world. You can see publishers from the Asia Pacific region, Germany, across the world that work specifically with news organizations around the world. So today I'm going to talk about changes in the news industry, how Facebook thinks about news, talk about newsfeed, where most news content is discovered, and specifically prescriptive advice on how to use Facebook to maximize distribution of your content. So let's start with the news industry today. Obviously, it's a time of great change in the news industry. The world is moving very quickly, and it's over time, how people consume news and how people discover news is changing. Today, I think most people understand that mobile is a primary way that people are discovering news content. And you can see that the trajectory for desktop was steep, but the trajectory of mobile is even steeper. And people are spending a lot of time in these new places where they are consuming news content. And mobile video is growing also at a very steep trajectory. It's predicted that there'll be a 14x increase in mobile video consumption in the next 3 years. And video is becoming more and more a core part of news consumption on Facebook. We've recently announced that more than 3 billion videos are consumed on Facebook every single day. And a lot of this is news content. So this is not the first time. Mobile is changing not just the news industry, it's changing a number of industries. Maybe there's some people in the room that use Tinder, and today, if you want to date or whatever the kids do on Tinder, all you have to do is swipe right to find somebody that you might be interested in. But what people might not know is that you used to write classified ads, and classified ads were a large source of revenue for news organizations. When I was 10 years old, after my parents divorced, I wrote a classified singles ad for my mom. She didn't get a lot of mail, but you used to have to place an ad in the newspaper. You would wait a couple weeks, maybe you got some letters, and online dating dating through classified ads took a long time, and now it happens almost instantly. But in addition to being great time in the news industry, there's also a lot of opportunity. There are significant investments being made in news around the world. In the US, just over the last few months, a number of news brands have gotten significant investments from venture capitalists, and this is also happening in Asia and the Middle East. A number of new brands are being formed for people to consume news in new ways. And India as well. The news industry, in some ways, is growing. And so it's a very exciting time to be in news. So let's talk about Facebook and why news matters to Facebook and in what ways news is part of the core Facebook experience. So our mission is to give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected. And news is a big part of what people connect about. So news stories become a point of conversation for people and their friends. According to Pew Research, which is a very respected research organization in the US, 30% of US adults get their news on Facebook. In the United Kingdom, 27% of people use Facebook to get local news. And it's young people are discovering news in extremely large numbers. 88% of millennials get news from Facebook regularly, according to a report that was released just in the last few weeks. And right here in Italy, 71% of young Italians get their news from Facebook. And it's not just news that they agree with. What we found from research and what research has shown is people get diverse opinions of news that they discover on Facebook. And if you just look at some of the top stories on Facebook this year, now this is not all of them, but some of the top stories, it's also very serious news. It's a good mix of news. For anybody here who is from the Northeast United States, we had a very brutal winter, so it's actually particularly nice to be outside of the sun here. People talked about that, but also serious news stories are at the top of the list. But one of the problems that we discovered in news, which Chris Cox, our Chief Product Officer, had an in-depth discussion about with Peter Kafka from Recode at a conference recently, is unfortunately the mobile news consumption experience is broken in many ways. So when you click from Facebook, anybody in the room who uses Facebook to consume news, you probably had the experience where you're going through feed and you see a news story that you're interested in, you tap on it, and our in-app browser comes up, and the news story is very slow to load. In fact, news content and article content more broadly is the slowest piece of content to load within the Facebook application. So what we're trying to do is fix the mobile news consumption experience. We have a very talented product manager in Menlo Park who's working on fixing this. His name is Mitu Singh. We just released a new update to our Android browser where we tried to speed up the mobile news consumption experience for people who tapped on articles. And what we found is as we sped up that experience, people read more content. So we think the more that we can do to make news consumption more seamless within Facebook, the more content people can consume. So we're looking at a broad set of potential product initiatives that can help us make the mobile news experience just a better experience and allow people access to more and more of the content that you create. But people are continuing to get traffic from Facebook. As you can see, the blue line is desktop, which remains relatively steady. This is people who are going from Facebook to consume other content. Recently, the end of last year, Android passed desktop in where referrals come from, and at the pace it's on, iOS, so Apple devices, will also pass desktop. So as I've gone around Europe this week and talked to people from Italy over the last couple days, everyone is seeing a very steep upward trend of people consuming content via mobile, and we see the same kind of data as people click away from Facebook to consume content. In talking to our partners, what we hear is that about 20% on average of referrals to news publishers comes from Facebook, and there are a number of publishers out there who have optimized for social and created social-first news consumption experiences. And in some cases, they're getting 50, and in many cases, much greater than 50% of their traffic directly from Facebook. So let's talk about newsfeed. And newsfeed is where the majority of news consumption happens on Facebook, or news content is discovered on Facebook. So I'd like to peel back and talk a little bit about how newsfeed works. So there are three primary goals of newsfeed on mobile, or newsfeed more broadly, but specifically on mobile. One is to connect people to their friends and family. And this is first and foremost what Facebook is about. It's a place where you share experiences with your friends and family. In a lot of cases, this is news content, and you're connecting with your friends and family about news content. But additionally, newsfeed informs people, and this is where people discover and click off to consume news content. And lastly, newsfeed is a place where you can find entertaining content. So looking at newsfeed on mobile, there's a lot of different types of content. You see relationships. For me, as I travel a lot, my favorite thing to do in the world is to go see live music, but it seems like I'm out of town. So here my friend Paul went and saw my favorite band, Sleater-Kinney, who just recently reformed, and I have to live vicariously through his Facebook posts since I'm out of town and he's at the show. Also on Facebook, people celebrate holidays. Those relationships I mentioned earlier, you see engagements come from them. And then sometimes you see a wedding, and then there's babies. There are a lot of babies on Facebook because that's what people choose to share. But also there's news content. So I'm sure if you were on Facebook and when the Apple Watch came out, you saw a lot of opinions. You see professional opinions of people reviewing. You hear from your friends that they are either so excited that they're going to get an Apple Watch or say that they will never get an Apple Watch. But people are sharing their perspective about what is a news story. And lastly, as I mentioned, video. Video is becoming such a core part of the Facebook experience since we launched native video a few months ago. So really it's about connecting people to what's important to them, and that's the core value that newsfeed serves. The thing that I think is particularly unique about newsfeed is that every single person on Facebook, and there are about 1.4 billion people that use Facebook every month, and on average people come back to Facebook about 14 times a day. Every time you load newsfeed, we create a completely unique experience for each individual. We base that experience based on a few different things. First of all, the people and pages that you're connected to. So as we load Newsfeed, we look and see all the available stories based on your connection. And then we look at the type of content that you like to consume. So if you read a lot of articles, we'll show you more articles. If you watch a lot of video, we'll show you more video. And if photos is your favorite type of content that you like to consume, we're going to give you more photos. And lastly, each individual post is looked at in real time to determine the amount of activity that post is getting. So if the New York Times makes a post and a lot of people are liking and sharing that, it's going to get more distribution and seen by more people, because we see that as a very high signal that is an important news story. So for instance, yesterday, an entertainer died, and my friend Matt shared this story. Because I'm connected to both the New York Times and to my friend Matt, Facebook saw that as a high signal story and showed that to me at the top of my newsfeed. We are also looking for news surfaces to show off news content. So when you saw the Vox story about this mysterious illness that Joni Mitchell has, when you tap on that story, you go to the mobile website of Vox to consume that story. And then when you go back to Facebook, you can see this related articles link beneath there. And here we show more stories about that particular topic. So in this case, there's another story about her hospitalization. There's videos that are on Facebook, and also more in-depth analysis of the disease that she may have. Also, we recently launched a new product that we call interest stories. So in this case, if we are able to tell that this is an interest that you have that a certain page is posting about, even if you're not connected to that page, we will show you stories about that interest that you have. So we tested this out on a hypothesis that even though you're not connected to that page, if you have this interest, if the topic of the story is important to you, we saw very high response rates. A lot of people really enjoyed seeing these stories, even though they were from pages they're not connected to. So we've broadened the distribution of this particular story type. And lastly, we've launched trending in the US and India, the UK, and Australia, New Zealand about 6 or 8 months ago. So this is a new surface, again, where news content can be discovered. We're testing it in the United States and the other English-speaking countries, and iterating on the product so that we can launch this globally once we feel like we have a great product that's going to deliver value to all the people on Facebook in different languages around the world. So let's talk a little bit about how you, as part of your job, can maximize Facebook as a platform. So first of all, we'll talk about journalists and publications, starting with journalists. So it's best to tell the story through a few examples. The first example is a German, he's a former executive turned journalist, Jürgen Todenhofer, who is out in ISIS territory and talking to ISIS soldiers and posting that content natively to Facebook. Here you see a video that he posted. He has about 350,000 people that follow his page. And if you look at the data here, this video got more than 5 million views, even though he only has 350,000 people that like his page, 40,000 likes, nearly 22,000 comments. But the most important number here is nearly 55,000 people thought that this story was important enough that they wanted their connections on Facebook to see it. So when I talked about activity on Facebook and how we look at that as a strong signal, these are obviously strong signals for us. So we distributed that story to as many people as that we thought it was relevant to. Mehdi Hasan is another journalist that I think is a good example. He was with the Huffington Post in the UK, and he's moving to Al Jazeera in the United States. He is a very outspoken Muslim and uses Facebook to share his stories about how he thinks that Muslims around the world are perceived. Again, you see the post activity that this gets, and his stories are seen by tens and hundreds and millions of people because they are resonating with people, and that is how we determine distribution. Also, I get asked a lot, is it too late for Facebook, right? You guys have been around for a while. News is a core part of your experience. I'm not on Facebook, I use other platforms, I think it's too late. And that is not at all the case. There are new journalists that are joining all the time. This BBC presenter, Victoria Derbyshire, did I get that right, Nick? My British friend helped me with the pronunciation. I think I blew it, though. She's a presenter on the BBC. She's using Facebook very authentically. In this case, she's actually, first of all, you can see she gave out her personal email address, but she's inviting people on Facebook to participate in a program that she's doing for the BBC. So let's talk about publications on Facebook. So this is how the publications that you work for distribute their content to potential readers and how to best leverage Facebook to maximize distribution. So video is a core part, like I said, of what we're doing. We're seeing news organizations create content specifically for Facebook and do it in a way that really makes sense on our platform. So this is an Indonesian publisher, news organization that's doing something that they are calling Face News, and it's doing very well, and it's resonating and getting a lot of interest in that region. But it's not about exclusive content. The BBC is sharing content on Facebook that also exists in other places, including their domain, and using Facebook as a new place and another place for them to engage with audiences. Vox is a publisher in the US, and they have been around just about 1 year. They are and have explained themselves as being a social mobile first publisher. And what their mission is to explain the news. So Vox recently published a case study. So this was on their site, so they published this publicly. I'm not giving any information out that they didn't put out first, but they've done some very innovative things in their product to help engage people on social. So you can see this is within their content management system, and you can see at the bottom that they are giving their editors the ability to write headlines specifically to be shared on social, because what many publishers have found is the headlines they write on their site don't necessarily resonate on social as much as they do in other places. And so social is a different way and takes a different tone in some cases to be successful. Not only is Vox allowing publishers to customize the headline, but they are also allowing their editors to customize the social image. So what image that goes out with that story is different on Facebook and other social platforms than it would be on their domain. Also, they are creating content that works specifically in a social mobile environment. So a few months ago, or about a half a year ago, there was the Ebola crisis in West Africa, and in the US there was mass hysteria that there was going to be an Ebola epidemic in the US, and Vox put out a very simple graphic to help explain the story and tell people if they're at risk, which clearly not very many people were. But in a traditional news organization might write a 2,000 or 5,000 word story about the risk for Ebola, where Vox took a very different and innovative approach and explained the story with one very simple graphic. And this was very powerful and shared very broadly on Facebook. Vox also recently, and this just speaks to the success they've had and how well they're respected, Vox recently scored an interview with the President of the United States. And what Vox does that's very innovative with their approach to video is that they think about creating video and producing video in a way where you don't need to listen to it to be able to consume the content. So with this interview with President Obama, they used a lot of graphic overlays and text to convey the interview if you weren't in a place, because on mobile you're not often in a place where you can use the volume. So they were able to allow people to consume this video without having the volume on. And Vox shared this, they first shared this video with President Obama, this exclusive interview on Facebook. One of the things that we've started to do very regularly is really engage deeply with our partners, our publishers, all of you, to understand how we can be a better platform for our partners. So recently, or actually last June, we held a number of feedback sessions at Facebook in New York. And what we heard from publishers you can put in 4 pretty simple buckets. One, people said they didn't want to spam their users. They didn't want to post too often. Posts that seemed out of date appeared in newsfeed. They don't understand why certain content does well, sometimes getting 2 and 3 and 4 times distribution than other content. And also, how can they tell which stories are going to go viral on Facebook? So we answered the feedback that we got from our partners with 4 new products. The first we call interest targeting. So interest targeting allows a publisher to send a post, a story, directly to a subset of their audience. So in this case, this is a Premier League game. Maybe that BBC Sport, that all of their however many million fans they have, wouldn't be interested in this story, but they think it's a very good story. They can choose exactly who they send this to have the chance to be tapped on and consumed in the mobile environment. So this is a great tool for publishers, both large and small, that have maybe narrower interests than their whole page would be interested in. This is working very, very, very well for some publishers. I can't promise these kind of results, but US News did a series of stories that were locally targeted to or of local interest to some specific cities, and they targeted posts specifically to those cities, and they saw incredible engagement and distribution, and most importantly to them, traffic back from these type of stories. When we heard from publishers that sometimes stories get distribution beyond their relevance, we went back and created a product that we call post-end date. So I think sports is the best example use case for these. So often before a game, a sports publisher would post we're excited about this game that's happening at noon. The fans of their page they're also excited for that game, so they like and comment and share with their friends. At that time, newsfeed was not sophisticated enough to know that game had already happened. We would only see that as a very engaging post, and thinking that we were doing the right thing, we would give that distribution for a couple days after that was no longer relevant to their fans. So we added a simple way for our partners to be able to expire a post out of feed, so it no longer gets newsfeed distribution, but it still lives on their page. We also created a product that we call Smart Publishing. So in some cases, after the fact, publishers would miss sharing a story from their page that organically was doing very well on Facebook because people's friends and family were sharing that post. So we created a product that we called Smart Publishing. This is an opt-in product, and what it does is if Facebook sees signals that there's an engaging post, we will automatically publish it from the publisher's site so that they can get the most distribution they can from their page. So again, this is an opt-in product, and what we found is some partners are using this when they're not staffed overnights and weekends. So when the social media team or the editorial team that runs the Facebook page goes home, they turn it on so that they're not missing out on good posts, and they turn it off in the morning when they come in, and it's also being used on weekends. We also launched an enhanced suite of analytics. So what this specifically does is in many cases, publishers were seeing multiple, like 300 or 400 times the distribution on their page, and they didn't understand why. So this strip at the bottom that has fake pages. So what we would find when we started to dig into why that story got massive distribution, it's because often a very large page or a person with a large following shared that post to their large following, and so that story got a lot of distribution. So this just helps publishers be able to track back why particular stories do well. We also heard from journalists about a year ago that they knew that there was a wealth of content on Facebook and they found it hard to discover. So we launched a product with Storyful, and Storyful is the premier social news agency, and we work with them to help find posts on Facebook that are relevant to the news cycle and distribute that via a page. And there's been some amazing content that has come through FB Newswire. It's a horribly tragic story, but the first video from the Taiwan plane crash was shared to Facebook. FB Newswire discovered this discovered this piece of video. We shared it on FB Newswire, and it was embedded with stories about this plane crash all over the web. So really, in addition, one of the things we understood that we had to do better was communicate with our partners. So we started a group called News, Media, and Publishing on Facebook. If you're not a member, please join. It's a closed community. And what we've really tried to do is, first of all, share as much information that would be relevant to our partners. We also triage first bug reports that come in through this page so that we can make sure that the most important bugs are getting dealt with first. So in this case, Liz Heron shared the Vox case study because we thought that that would be important to all of our partners to understand why Vox is doing so well. We also recently launched a media blog. Again, very simple, but here we share best practices and any new products that are relevant to all of our media partners. So our company's motto has traditionally been move fast and break things. But as we've gotten more mature and as a company, we invest more in media, we've transitioned our motto to become move fast and build things. We're really about building relationships with our partners and trying to make sure that we can help your content find the right person at the right time on our platform. That's also great for the people that use Facebook because they're discovering high signal content within our platform. And when they discover great content on Facebook over and over, they want to come back to us more often. So we've aligned the incentives between people, Facebook, and our publishing partners. Also, one thing that I think is unique about Facebook, and I think the personalization of feed really speaks to this, is we don't think about nameless, faceless users. We refer to everybody that uses Facebook as people. So our metric used to be daily active users. We now refer to it as daily active people because it's not about 1.4 billion nameless people. It is actually 1.4 people that really count on us. And lastly, we are a fast-moving company that is trying to innovate as quickly as we can and try and do things that align across the incentives that I mentioned earlier for people, publishers, and for our company. And we're going to continue to move and continue to be bold, but we're doing this in a way where we put a lot of rigor behind the initiatives that we do to make sure that we're delivering value for everybody involved. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to go very, very fast with my only question, and then hopefully there'll be time for some more. Let's get rid of the elephant in the room first. There's been a lot of speculation, and actually an article in the New York Times and a lot of reports after that about ongoing discussions and agreements maybe on the way between Facebook and some of the biggest media outlets in the world, both traditional and all digital, like the New York Times and BuzzFeed, etc., about putting the contents only on Facebook and not on their website. And what obviously comes to mind is where is the advantage for the companies giving up their links and all the goodies that come with that, the data, the comments, and what we're really becoming affectionate to.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, and I think everyone agrees, that the mobile web consumption experience is broken. And so we have a number of different product initiatives to try and address that, because really we can't fulfill our mission if we're not giving people access to the content that they're trying to consume on Facebook. So speeding up the Android browser was our first product initiative, and we're looking at a number of different things to try and solve the problem of giving people access to your content, which ultimately means that, as I alluded to with people that were able to access the content faster in the mobile browser. They read more content. So we need, whatever we do from a product perspective to be able to solve this problem, we need to do it in a way that aligns, like I said earlier. It has to be good for Facebook. It has to be good for our partners so that you participate. But most importantly, it has to be good for people, because all of our jobs is to give people access to the content that they're trying to get to.
But where is the monetization of the contents in all this?
Well, today the referrals that we send to news partners, you monetize that on your domain. And anything that we do, from a product perspective, to be able to solve the problem that we all feel, that people can't access their content, we have to do it in a way that works for your business, or you're not going to participate. So we're working on, again, a number of different ways to give people access to the content that they're trying to get to.
Okay, since we have only really 5 minutes left, I will start with the questions. There's one here in the first row. Where's the microphones? Oh.
We'll share one.
I have a question about censorship. When Facebook becomes the world chief editor, how are you working to ensure that you are not imposing censorship on stories based on your moral codex? For instance, I'm representing the largest newspaper in Norway. A couple of years ago, we had one of our polar explorers from 100 years ago. He used to take nude pictures of himself. So he posed on ice bear skin, totally nude, photos that he sent to his girlfriend. We've also had breast cancer stories with nude breasts. These were censored by Facebook. Why?
Obviously, I'm not aware of those specific stories, but we have community guidelines. We have an operations team, and this was a couple of years ago. We've become better at how we're enforce those community guidelines. We have an operations team that is, their job is to adhere to our community guidelines, and it's, like I said, we've gotten better at it over the couple of years, but the platform is extremely large, and so we have to, it takes us a little bit of time to figure out exactly how best to enforce those community guidelines and do it in a way that's fair.
Anybody else in the room? Here.
Hello. Does it work?
I'll repeat the question if you just want to.
No, non funziona.
Here you go.
I think you're giving too much power to the videos. I think I find it a little bit annoying in my own view. Maybe it's my timeline is like this. I can see that you're giving it a lot of space to this this field, one thing. And the other thing, why should a media company put a video in Facebook rather than on its own website and so give up any advertisement from its site?
I like the dual role. So the first question was about is there too much video on Facebook? Like I said, we are individualizing newsfeed for each person every time they log on. So if you watch video, we will give you more video. One of the things that I think people assume is because their timeline is a certain way, that everyone's timeline is a certain way, which when we personalize the timeline for each individual, every time they log on, they are having a unique experience. So because you see a certain thing doesn't mean everybody's seeing a certain thing. Your question about video monetization, the other elephant in the room, I'm surprised it took this long to get to. So one of the things that we are trying to solve is right now newsfeed, and as I talked about earlier, what we're trying to do is give people access to the content that they want. Right now, the currency for video advertising is the pre-roll ad. And with autoplay, which is, I think, which has driven a lot of the engagement around video and has created, I think, a pretty magical experience for people to discover what video they'd be interested in. If you put pre-rolls in the autoplay environment, it doesn't work. So today, our partners are getting a lot of value out of uploading video natively. And first of all, you have control over, it's up to you how much you decide to upload. But right now, videos drive a lot of engagement, which ups how we see each page's engagement. And so video is driving engagement for the page overall. And we've also seen video drives incremental likes for pages. So now there's a great audience engagement reason. And in the future, we're thinking about and working on, we did a test last November with the NFL, the National American Football League, as I say in Europe, and tested some video monetization. We learned some things, and we're going to be continuing to iterate on what the right video monetization is for the unique Facebook experience. Oh, this is my job.
Thanks. So you're talking about creating a user experience that allows the user to see what he wants. All right. So an algorithm, which is basically, I know that the topic is very broad and algorithm transparency is not something simple, but an algorithm is telling us what we want to see, okay? So this is the basic reasoning about this. And I see a dichotomy in what a user needs to see and wants to see, because in the traditional news, we don't see just what we want to see, but also what we need to see, and we wouldn't want to. So since Facebook is becoming the main information platform, and will become, even for my generation, I was born in 1995, so my generation don't buy
really
newspapers anymore. Yeah, we just get information about that. And so my question is, how is ethic about information, since you were a journalist, is seen in working about the news feed, which is deciding for us what we should see, or what we see actually?
Yeah. So first of all, just I'm not a journalist. I've always worked on behalf of journalism and been an advocate for journalism, but I can't claim to be a journalist as much as I wish I could. So I wouldn't say that Facebook should not necessarily be the only way people consume news and discover news. Facebook should be complementary, right? So if I look at the way I consume news, I read the New York Times, I read the Wall Street Journal, I read magazines, and then I discover a lot of news that I wouldn't necessarily have gone out to find within my news feed. So it's a complementary news experience. And it's not like we are aspiring to become the first news source for people. And also, if I think that's as simple. I think I feel like it's as simple as that. And also, it's not that we control newsfeed. You control newsfeed by what you tell us that you're interested in. And so you send us signals, and we give you content that you're interested in.
Super tailored news. That's a very interesting question. There's one here, one on the back, and maybe we have to wrap up.
Hi. Maybe this discussion can work best in instituted democracies. But what about news organizations who are using Facebook in non-democratic regimes? I come, for example, from the Middle East, where, especially after the revolutions and the Arab Spring, media organizations are more controlled by governments, where they are putting more control, not in Facebook, but media content over Facebook, and they are using pseudo accounts in order to promote agendas, and for general audience who are using Facebook, they are getting swamped by PR news from organizations that are controlled by the government.
So if that content doesn't feel legitimate to people, they're not going to engage with it. It's going to get minimal distribution. So really, the power is in the hands of the people who consume the content, and if it gets low engagement, it will not get high distribution.
accounts that are created by the government, sort of like online army who are on Facebook, who would get these news and redistribute them time by time by time, and then they are getting more popular on Facebook, and then they are getting redistributed.
Well, we try to not have, I mean, Facebook is about real identity, and we try to enforce people's, that they can only be their real identity on Facebook, and so through some operations, we try to tell that they are fake accounts, and we take them down, and we do that a lot.
Okay, there is a question there, and then I think this is it.
Arrivederci.
Hi, George Brock from City University in London. Just to tie together the themes that have come up in some of the questions, it seems to me that there is an inescapable set of what I can really only call moral questions that surround journalism. Sometimes journalists say, you may not know that you want to know this, but we really think it's important that you know it right now. That's one of the impulses in journalism. Given that you're wielding a lot of distributional power, and I don't think you disagree with that suggestion, do you think that you are accountable for the quality and integrity of your decisions to your community of users?
I think that we are accountable for creating we have to create a great experience for people on Facebook and give them the content that they're interested in. And like I said earlier, Facebook should be a complementary news source, and people should be using the BBC or whatever news sources that they count on first, and then discovering news that they wouldn't necessarily know that exists as a complement.
I don't hear it. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Andy. Thank you to the audience.
I have an ally here in the front row. What's he doing? It's worth waiting for, I promise. No, actually, I don't.
Spero che, I hope they will let us stay in the room for a little longer, since we waited a little bit at the beginning. So we can...
I'm sure there are radio people in the room, and I know dead air is a sin. So we have an idea in the front row. Yes.
Tell us about your new offices in California.
Oh, I haven't been there, but sure.
The question is about the new headquarters of Facebook in California.
We did. We just moved across the street to a second campus. This is, I believe, the 5th Facebook office that we've had in California. Not to give away the headline from my speech, but I'm based in New York. So I haven't been to the...
Andy, che non ha capito una parola di quello che ho detto, ma va benissimo, e per la sua presentazione. Dopo avremo la possibilità di fargli delle domande, naturalmente. Floor is yours.
I think we are having some technical problems. It worked last night, so maybe you can say what you said again. But slower?
This is totally... uninteresting for the audience, I'm sorry.
I saw a thumbs up earlier, and then I saw a lot of this, so I think that's a bad thing.
Maybe we can start with the questions. So do it the other way around. I don't know if it's weird to you, or...
I think many of the questions you would ask would then be answered in the presentation. So this gentleman has been running back and forth many times. Are there any Mac geniuses in the house? Thank you. Literally been working in online news as long as it's existed. When CNN launched CNN.com in 1995, we built ourselves as the world's first constantly updated news and information service, which we all today take for granted that all news sites are constantly updated, but in 1995, that was a very big deal. I had a lot of opportunities in my career to work on unique news experiences. One that I'm particularly proud of was when I was at CNN, I led a partnership with Facebook to celebrate the inauguration of Barack Obama through the partnership for the inauguration. In the US, the inauguration of Barack Obama was a very big deal, with the first African American being elected president. His inauguration happened during a work day, and so many people were left without the ability to share this moment with their friends. So CNN and Facebook partnered to create a social news experience where people could celebrate the inauguration. New office in California yet, but we are rapidly growing as a company. When I started in New York 4.5 years ago, we had about 30 people. I think we have about 500 to 600 now in our New York office. It's a mix of sales, engineering, product, and our media partnerships team is also based in New York.
So I'm going to ask you a question just to kill this weight, which I'm sure doesn't spoil your presentation.
Better than my bad jokes, so thank you.
Because we talked about that, and I think it was a fascinating issue to hear what you brought from your experience in legacy or traditional journalism in this new capacity, and what's the things that struck you the most, and then you think were more valuable. Oh.
How about this for the presentation? Oh, great. And I can click from here? Yeah. Perfect. Green means go. Universal. Thank you. So thank you very much for getting this working. I think we were doing a good job killing time, but not a great job. First of all, I want to thank the IJF for giving me the opportunity to speak to all of you today on behalf of Facebook, and also come to this incredible setting, both for the speech. This is a beautiful place, but Perugia and this area of the country is really amazing. So thank you for inviting me here today. So first, I'm going to introduce myself. Yes. So like I said, my name is Andy Mitchell. I am based in New York. I am on the media partnerships team. So what our role is with the company is to work with media companies around the world. My focus is on news. I oversee the news team. We are a global news team. We have people across the world working specifically with news publishers. I've been in news my whole career. I started at CNN. I was actually part of the launch team at CNN.com in 1995. So I've